Talk, the show where we chat about all things NXT. I am Boris, and I am running this show solo. What an interesting episode of NXT it was, as we are firmly on the road to Stand and Deliver. Now, you see, yesterday is a perfect example of an episode of the reason why I hate these somewhat like secondary kind of major shows in the middle of the build-up of a major show. You know, you had the entire roadblock build-up happening, and I feel like that took precedence, obviously, because you're trying to get the ratings there. That took a lot of the build-up and the hype around Stand Deliver, so some of the build for Stand Deliver had to wait until after roadblock. So yesterday's episode kind of suffered from this. I feel like this was a perfect case of why I don't like those shows. The overall, the booking seemed a little chaotic. Some things didn't make sense. There was a shit ton of quote-unquote qualifying matches and number one contender matches that just seemed off overall. And it led to a very strange NXT episode. But to me, kind of like the thing that felt the most off, the most uncharacteristic, was the whole Grayson Waller, Johnny Gargano angle. But all of that in a little bit. I hope everyone is doing well. It is, actually, it's a beautiful, at least looking, sunny day here in Toronto this morning. As I, prep for the day and another busy day. It's gonna be another busy day for me, I should say. But that's how life works. That's how it's been the past few weeks. And things have been fairly busy, as I mentioned. So I know Matt's schedule is super crazy right now as well. So I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to take this episode solo because it's so much easier than trying to match schedules with other people and whatnot. Yeah, so what a crazy few days it's been. If you haven't listened to the It's Canon podcast, well, number one, what are you waiting for? There's a couple ways you can listen to that show. It's canonpodcast.com, or you can become a patron member here on SNME Radio, and you can get that part of your Patreon feed. The way you do that is patreon.com/SNME Radio. There are so many shows for you to listen to. You're probably getting 2 shows a day, and we have review shows for just about any wrestling TV show that's on a major network here in North America. But my point right now is, as I was talking about on the It's Canon podcast, man, it's just been a crazy few days here. If you haven't been seeing on the news, right? Things haven't been too good for some banks. So I've just been super busy with some customers, and that's been that. But man, I think a lot of my extra chatter, a lot of my random chatter has been around the popularity of The Last of Us, and the Sunday's finale was so decisive in so many ways, and it was so well done. I loved it. Stayed true to the game for the most part. Really left you with that moral dilemma that the game left you with, and I thought that was part of the brilliance of the finale. And aside from that, I've actually been really enjoying the World Baseball Classic. If you listen to BAM, Matt and I briefly talked about that. Canada, such a topsy-turvy tournament for a lot of teams, right? Like one day they'll do great, one day they'll lose via mercy rule, and then the next day they'll win again. So it's been a very interesting World Baseball Classic, to say the least, and I was really thinking Canada, specifically when I was talking about the ups and the downs of so many teams. So watching, for lack of a better word, meaningful baseball in, late February, early March was really cool, even though we're in mid-March, but you know what I mean. So that's been a lot of fun. Yeah, so that's kind of been keeping me at bay, keeping me sane while I've been super busy. And again, I really hope that this is the last week of insanity for work, because now we're leaning on a month of just nonstop days. But that's it is what it is, man. You got to do what you got to do. All right, so you know what? I have a busy day. I'm sure that a lot of people have a busy day. And better than just hearing me ramble along and along and along, let's just chat some NXT from March 14th as we build to Stand and Deliver, which is just 2.5 weeks away. So, like I mentioned right off the top, right? The build has been happening for a while. Not every story has just happened over, last night's episode. Something like a Braun Breaker, Carmelo Hayes, that's actually been happening since the last pay-per-view, since Vengeance Day. You've had teases and you've had some stories that have gone through Roadblock, but you still had to build up to Roadblock, and that was literally a roadblock to the build to Stand and Deliver, which was very evident in last night's show. Because, like I mentioned, last night's show seemed a little chaotic in the booking, seemed a little random in the booking. And I think, again, what really, really kind of, the cherry on top was just the uncharacteristic, to a certain extent. Maybe you guys can talk to me and talk me off of this idea, but was the very uncharacteristic Grayson Waller home invasion, the Grayson Waller Brian Pillman, the Grayson Waller Stone Cold, I should say, the Grayson Waller Seth Rollins, as he literally went to pay a visit to Casa Gargano. So that was that. All right, let's just talk NXT. The show opens up with a recap of last week's Roadblock show. The highlight package kind of really focused on the Roxanne Perez injury angle. So that was a big focus of the early part of the show. Obviously, the broadcast team was Vic Joseph, Booker T, and Alicia Taylor. Show kicks off with Johnny Gargano coming out. He comes out in regular street clothes, has a mic in hand. The fans actually took a second to realize that it was Johnny Gargano. That change in theme. Oh man, what a horrible new theme that he has. Even though it's similar, it's different all at once. It was very weird theme that he has. So it took the fans a couple seconds to realize that it was him. Once he's in the ring, he does get the Johnny Wrestling and welcome back chance. Gargano says, he kind of talks and makes jokes about the whole, you guys have my back, making reference to December 2021 when Waller literally went through the crowd and attacked him. So Gargano said that he's back in NXT to finish his story. Gargano said his story ended with a cliffhanger 15 months ago. He said it felt like something was missing. He said the last time the NXT fans saw him was when Waller was standing over him, his back on the announce table, and Waller standing tall. He said he gave Waller a gift by waiting to see what Waller would do. Gargano said the last person to take him out was Tommaso Ciampa, who went on to become one of the greatest NXT champions of all time. Gargano said Waller had 2 chances to become champion, and he failed. Gargano said Waller blamed everyone but himself and disrespected the fans, the locker room, and NXT itself. Gargano said, "You don't screw with a man's home." That's when, as Gargano is kind of taking in the crowd reaction, you can kind of hear some rustling. You can hear Vic Joseph kind of saying something, but kind of to himself, not to the fans or not to, the audience. He approaches the ring, his phone in hand, shows him footage of Grayson Waller's social accounts where he is on Twitter Live or something like that. He's watching the show from inside Gargano's actual home as he's parked outside. Gargano gets all freaked out and he races out of the ring, runs to the back. So there you go, the setup to a home invasion angle. Again, I know that the whole idea was to make it personal. I know that the whole idea here was to take it to the next level, right? Waller's pissed that Gargano kind of spoiled his WrestleMania moment with Shawn Michaels. I get that. But this seems very uncharacteristic of Grayson Waller. I feel like there's so many things that they could have done with Grayson Waller. That was my initial thought at this point. Then as this angle plays out, I felt kind of like, oh man, this just isn't right. But we'll talk about that in a little bit. We get footage airing from earlier in the day with Wesley unloading his vehicle in the most dangerous spot of all of NXT, that is the parking lot. Axiom just shows up right beside him, and he said he was going to follow Lee everywhere because he wanted to accept the open challenge for the NXT North American title before anyone else could. Wesley said the match was 8 hours away and asked, well, Axiom, what would you do until then? Lee asked if Axiom was hungry. Axiom said, well, he could eat. Pretty Deadly come out, and it is time for the first match of the night, which was for the NXT Tag Team titles, as Pretty Deadly went up against Gallus. All right, so this match was relatively good, right? It got about 12 minutes and a half of TV time. And overall, I really did like this match. Pretty Deadly, they're just ready. They're ready. Move them up. Give them the opportunity. They are ready for the main roster. And Gallus continues kind of making a name for themselves in NXT, getting themselves in the fans' kind of a radar, right? So I think that this match was really well done. Positioned everyone, I think, in a good spot. Pretty Deadly won't be in a match in Stand and Deliver, but obviously, as we learn later in the show, they are going to be involved in something, and I think that it makes sense, and I'm hoping that Gallus has a one-on-one match, just a regular tag team match with someone, because right now we're getting a lot of multi-people matches. But again, that seems to be the MO of these NXT Premium Live events. So, back in the ring, Prince, after a little while, Prince picks up a near fall on Coffee, hits him with one of the tag team titles belts. Pretty Deadly set up for a double team move, but Wolfgang pulls the rope down, causes Prince to tumble at ringside. Gallus then hits their finisher on Wilson, and Wolfgang pins him, and Gallus gets the win in 12 minutes, 30 seconds. All in all, I like this match. A very strong match. I don't remember much of the show as I'm going through my notes, but I think this was my favorite match of the night, all in all. So pretty strong start to NXT in terms of a match, and much better kind of a flow since that very awkward what's going to happen next with the Waller Gargano angle. All right, so Fallon Henley was in a camouflaged cover. Josh Briggs were shown outside of the office of Kiana James. Henley was going to pick the lock, but Briggs showed her that, hey, it's just unlocked. Kind of cheesy, but kind of funny all at once. Henley found a qualifying match contract for Stand and Deliver. They also found dates on a calendar with a man named Sebastian. They also found this master plan to having a boyfriend. They also found a card that thanked James for one of their dates, which was probably the same card that was in the flowers last week. They took photos of the cards and left the room. All right. We get a very somber sounding Shawn Michaels narrating his tweets from earlier in the day. All right, so the tweets went as followed. As of Friday morning, Roxanne Perez was discharged from the hospital. However, after numerous tests, Roxanne's health is still in question. With Stand and Deliver in less than 3 weeks, I have the obligation to announce we possibly have to crown a new NXT Women's Champion. Starting tonight, there will be a series of qualifying matches with the winners advancing to Stand and Deliver to compete to become the NXT Women's Champion in a ladder match. So there you go. Another very weird angle with one of their major titles, with their major women's title, which I don't know. What's interesting though is I've seen on some Facebook groups that this match or this story at least has people talking. There was one person or one group which I was actually shocked at this conversation was, is this legit? Is this story? Clearly it's story. But I think the most important takeaway here is that, I don't think people have thought far enough to think, hey, Roxanne Perez is going to be in this match, and this is just a way of setting up a multi-person match here, which is, again, weird because I would have much preferred to see Tiffany Stratton go one-on-one with Roxanne Perez, but maybe the powers that be don't think Tiffany Stratton can do that just yet. But that's that. All right. Cut to a video of a doctor. And, he was a doctor. He was wearing a white lab coat, and he was outside. So he must be a doctor. The physician addressed Roxanne Perez's medical state coming out of last week's injury angle. He said they were unable to determine what caused her to collapse last week, and said that means he can't provide an estimated date for her return to the ring. Cut back to the Performance Center. We get another somber Vic Joseph and Booker T speaking at ringside about this entire situation. Booker said that everything is touch and go, has highs and lows. So again, really trying to push the whole, is she okay? Will she even make it to Stand and Deliver? Will she be able to wrestle again? All right, so the next match was the first qualifying match for the ladder match for the NXT Women's Championship at Stand and Deliver, and had Zoe Stark and Sol Ruca. This match was a lot of fun. I think this match was exactly what it needed to be. Very short, though, only went 4 minutes and 35 seconds. But we saw, an intense Zoe Stark, and we saw the athletic and popular Sol Ruca doing her thing. Stark got the better of Ruca for a very large stretch of the match. Ruca comes back with a combo of moves that ended with a power slam for a near fall. Ruca sent Stark to ringside, and then she did a top rope moonsault onto her outside. Ruca sent Stark back inside the ring. She went for a springboard move, but Stark caught her with everything but knees, and she did her finisher. Got the win, and like I mentioned, 4 minutes, 35 seconds. Very short match, to the point. And this is kind of what I meant, that some of these matches seemed, I don't even want to say rushed, but seemed very random. And there seemed to be a lot of them planned because they have so many multi-people matches, and they're hell-bent on having qualifying matches for this. So there you go. Zoe Stark is the first person in the match. Saw an interesting comment on the Facebook group, and I believe that it was Bob Kapoor who said that, he would have much rather seen these two in the match. And I agree. Having said that, what I've seen WWE do a lot of recently is those last chance matches that involves a lot of people who lost qualifying matches be put in a multi-person match to determine that last spot. So I can really see Sol Ruca being that person that ends up in the match, because I would love to see, Sol Ruca in a ladder match. I think that, her athleticism would be so good in that type of match. All right, we cut to someone's back. They're sitting down. They're writing. They're angry. They look frustrated. And then we realize that it is none other than Scripps. He breaks a bunch of pencils, crumbles a lot of paper, and essentially says that he's going after his arch nemesis or something like that, and calls out Axiom. All right, moving on. We see Isla Dawn, Alba Fire making their entrance. Kate and Carter and Katana Chance were in the ring. Ivy Nile and Tatum Paxley make their entrance. We see footage airing of last week's frustrated Tatum Paxley telling Carter that Nile was busy celebrating with the Creed brothers, planting that seed of what happened later in this match. All right, we go to the third match of the night, which was a number one contenders match. Number one contenders triple threat match for the NXT Women's Championship at Stand and Deliver, which was Isla Dawn and Alba Fire versus Kaden Carter and Katana Chance versus Ivy Nile and Tatum Paxley. All right, so at one point, Nile goes for a tag. Paxley dropped off the apron. Carter and Chance set up for their finisher on Dawn, but Fire broke it up. Paxley kicked Nile, threw her back in the ring. Dawn hit Nile with a backstabber, and Fire performed a swanton on Nile before getting the pin in about 4 minutes and 10 seconds. So, Isla Dawn, Alba Fire, Mama Shango gets her chance at the tag team titles along with Alba Fire at Stand and Deliver. All right, so this match, again, very short, seemed very chaotic, seemed very rushed. You had a triple threat tag team match for 4 minutes and 10 seconds. See what I mean about the booking in this episode? Like, you know, they if Stand and Deliver, or sorry, if Roadblock wasn't in the way, I feel like a lot of these matches would have had that natural progression. And I, not to say that they didn't, they kind of did have that natural progression to this point, but I just feel like the execution was rushed. I think that's the best thing to say here. All right, Ilya Dragunov is walking backstage. We then see Braun Breaker. He's standing backstage alone when Tony D'Angelo, A.O., and Channing Stacks Lorenzo show up, offer to take out Carmelo Hayes. Breaker becomes a comedian, and he starts conjuring up a bunch of the cliche mob movie style hits that he could. D'Angelo said that he's been watching way too many movies. Breaker said he appreciates the offer, but passed before leaving. D'Angelo then talks one-on-one to Lorenzo Stacks and essentially says, you know, Stacks has put himself ahead of put the family ahead of himself. He's literally put his body in danger to protect him, and he thinks it's time for them to go after the NXT Tag Team titles. Interesting stuff there. We'll see what happens there. Again, I'm kind of hoping that we don't get a multi-person match here because we're getting a lot of multi-people matches already at Stand and Deliver. All right, so Ilya Dragunov comes out. He's ready for an in-ring promo. He said his career has been life-changing. He mentions his wife and his son, how they've been given opportunities that he felt never would have been possible without NXT and WWE. And then he shifts his focus to JD McDonough, and said he needed to rid himself of the one thing that's caused them issues over the past little while, the one problem. And he says he needs to rid himself of the one problem once and for all. JD McDonough comes out and he's walking slowly around the ring. McDonough climbed onto the ring apron and said that they seemed destined to continue their feud for a long time. Dragunov said he would take out McDonough next week. McDonough entered the ring and went face-to-face with Dragunov. McDonough said he looked forward to their symphony of sadism and said it would be hard to watch, much like a scalpel in the eye. Dragunov avoided McDonough's headbutt. Both men started fighting at ringside, fighting all over the arena, and they fight right through an exit door to end this segment. So again, I feel like this story has had a natural progression through Stand and Deliver and here, but it just seemed very rushed at this point. Everything seems like we're getting a lot of segments on this episode of NXT. And again, it wasn't a bad episode, but things just seemed very fast-paced. All right, we are in the back And we are with the hardest working reporter in all of professional wrestling, Mackenzie Mitchell. And this time she's with Pretty Deadly. Wilson said they didn't need Stand and Deliver, but rather Stand and Deliver needs Pretty Deadly. Wilson's and Prince then decided that they're just gonna host Stand and Deliver. That's how you get those gigs, huh? Always wondered how they decided that. Interesting spot for Pretty Deadly, right? I guess if you're not going to have a multi-person match at Stand and Deliver, right? It gives a new team the opportunity to go up against Gallus, and it gives Pretty Deadly something to do because they are super talented, on the mic. They know how to do this, but I'm a little concerned because anytime that Pretty Deadly has been given like a very featured spot, and I don't know whether it's a lot of time to prepare or just the focus being on them, or something. So I'm really hoping that Pretty Deadly's hosting gig is a successful one, and because I know that there are some people who have kind of said, who are these guys, when they have failed on some of their in-ring promos and whatnot. All right, Wesley, he's shown walking backstage. He stops and he notices that referees are pulling apart Dragunov and McDonough. Lee said something to McDonough, who pie-faced him. Lee then threw some punches at McDonough. Then a producer kind of told Lee to move along as they're still trying to stop Dragunov and McDonough from fighting. All right, we see Tyler Bate, and he's helping Thea Hale through a yoga workout while Duke Hudson kind of stands behind him. Andre Chase showed up and asked if he could talk with Hudson. Chase sang the praises of Chase U, and he's trying to justify Chase U to Duke Hudson. And he said that Hudson is now living and dying with every loss, not because because Chase U is useless, but because he cares. He's angry at their losses because he cares is the point he's trying to make. He said it's possible that Chase U has done more for Hudson than anything else in his life. I really like this, and I liked where they were going with this, but later on, as they were talking, Ava Rain, who was shown watching the entire conversation, lurking in the background, removes her masks, places it beside Hudson right after Chase leaves, smiles at Hudson, and just calmly walks away. So there we go. We're starting to see is Duke Hudson gonna join the schism? Grayson Waller was shown sitting in his car outside of Gargano's home. This is all done via social media's live. Waller was playing Neighborhood Watch and said he would make sure that Gargano didn't leave his door unlocked. So again, this feels very random to me. This doesn't feel like something that Grayson Waller would do. These aren't the games that Grayson Waller usually plays. And this seems like he went from 0 to 100 really quick over his shock and awe of Gargano returning. So again, this just feels more like Michaels redoing stories that he's seen throughout his career rather than playing to what Grayson Waller would do. I don't know. Very strange, very weird, very awkward. We see a group of wrestlers fighting backstage. Everyone wants that NXT North American title shot. Wesley eventually makes his entrance. The brawl spills into the arena area. Axiom, though, clears way, enters the ring, but Scripps flies right into the frame, takes him out. Wesley is confused. Wesley becomes more confused because McDonough enters the ring, clotheslines Lee from behind. Then Dragunov shows up, fights McDonough. Lee then seems a little annoyed, and he does a flip, a tope con hero on everybody still fighting on the entrance way. So that was that. There you go. I guess, we'll see what happens. All right. Dragon Lee is interviewed. Whoa, I screwed that one up. The hardest working reporter in all of professional wrestling, Mackenzie Mitchell, is with Dragon Lee. She essentially introduces him, welcomes him to NXT. He says that he came to be a great example for Lucha Libre. He said that he knows he's going to love it here in NXT, and he has a lot to prove and a lot to fight for. Very quick, very to the point. I like this. Can't wait to see what Dragon Lee does. All right, we get a video package, and it's really focused on the Apollo Crews Dabba-Kato feud. Kato said that trust and loyalty is all gone, and he's more dangerous than ever. They both essentially said that the other person's going to pay. Back from commercial, we see the hardest working reporter in all of professional wrestling, Mackenzie Mitchell, with JC Jane. Jane vents about Gigi Dolan and then claimed that she separated her shoulder just seconds into their match. Jane said that if Dolan considers that a victory, then she's even more pathetic than she thought she was. Jane said she's going to be thinking of Dolan every single second she's away and vows to break her heart and her face again. Same here, JC Jane. Same here. I think of Dolan every second I get. I'm absolutely joking. But this promo was not that good, in my opinion. The way that JC Jane delivers some lines is just it's too mean girl, too annoying. So I'm not convinced right now on this whole JC Jane character, and I wonder how long she's actually going to be away for with an injury. So we'll see how this goes down. But again, say la vie. Apollo Crews makes his entrance. Dabba-Kato makes his entrance. Once Kato got to ringside, Crews dove from the top rope right onto him. They're brawling. The match hasn't even started yet, but they're fighting. Kato eventually plays Crews on the apron, chops him hard. Once they're in the ring, the referee finally calls for the bell to start the fourth match of the night, which was Apollo Crews versus Dabba-Kato. So they're going back and forth. They eventually end up back in ringside. They continue their brawl. They return to the ring. Kato used his boot to stomp the chest of Crews as we head to picture-in-picture. Back from the break, Crews, and a little bit later on after, this match was essentially Dabba-Kato using his size and his strength, and Apollo Crews using his speed and agility. Very much David and Goliath type situation for Crews here. So in the match, Crews throws a combo of kicks and splashes Kato in the corner. Crews powers up Kato for a Death Valley driver, and then he does a top rope frog splash. This is only good for a 2 count. They go back to ringside. Kato slams Crews onto the bottom half of the ring steps. Crews pulls himself up and beats the referee's count by returning to the ring, but he was still not all at 100%. Kato does his sit-out powerbomb, gets the win in 8 minutes, 45 seconds. So, a match like this, you would think would be on Stand and Deliver, right? This is a feud that's been going on for a while. Didn't happen at Roadblock, and I know that NXT always likes having a big feud or something, big story after their events or whatever you would consider Roadblock. But it just, the timing of this seemed off and weird, and this was given, considering the lengths of other matches on the show, this was given considerable amount of time. So sure, I guess this is going to continue. So are we going to see the rematch at Stand and Deliver? If so, they already got through the regular match, so I'm pretty sure if we're going to see Apollo Crews and Dabba-Kato at Stand and Deliver, it'll be some form of a gimmick match, a steel cage match, or something like that, a street fight. We'll see. But again, very rushed, very random episode of NXT that we're getting here. All right, speaking of random, an NXT Anonymous video is showing Shawn Michaels talking with Wes Lee. Shawn Michaels is telling Wes Lee that he loves him, but the open challenges are chaotic and killing them backstage since they're so preoccupied on everyone fighting. Lee talks about how he just wants to prove himself, and he said he wanted to face 10 of the best at Stand and Deliver. Michaels says tranquilo, basically, tells him he would meet him halfway by booking a 5-way match and allowing Wes Lee to select his 4 opponents. Michaels and Lee agreed to the match and hug it out. So there you go. We are getting a multi-person match at Stand and Deliver. Notice that it's not the regular ladder match that we get for the North American title. And I guess that is because we already have a ladder match booked here. So we're just going to get a good old 5-person match, which, again, should be tons of fun. So who do I think it's going to be here? Obviously Wesley. I'm guessing Axiom. I'm guessing JD McDonough. I'm also guessing Ilya Dragunov. And the fifth person in this match I can see being Dragon Lee. Backstage, Kiana James leaves a phone message for Fallon Henley while Brooks Jensen was texting James's message questioning where James was and said she needed her partner. Jensen said he would go to ringside with James, who said she needs to be alone. Jensen thought she needed time alone, but she corrected him and just said, I need to be alone for the match. Jensen leans in for a kiss, but Kiana James already walked away. And this leads us to the next qualifier match for the ladder match at Stand and Deliver for the NXT Women's title. The match is Kiana James versus Gigi Dolan. 2 minutes, 45 seconds is this match. Again, crazy, chaotic, but short matches. Crazy, chaotic booking and short matches, I should say. Both entrances were televised. I think the entrances were longer than the actual match. James performs an early neck breaker, gets a 2 count. Dolan comes back with a series of kicks, a nice clothesline, get a near fall. James rolls up Dolan for a 2 count. Dolan comes right back with a slam, gets the 3 count. And that was that. Again, a very, very, very short match. Dolan looked a lot better in this match than she did against Jacy Jayne. She ended the match with a Cobra Twist Slam. So that was that. So she advances, joins Zoe Stark in that ladder match. I guess, obviously, I'm adding Roxanne Perez in that match. So far we have Zoe Stark, Gigi Dolan, and Roxanne Perez. And I wonder how many more people we're going to get. I'm guessing another 2 to make it 5 for this ladder match. That seems to be a good round number for a stand and deliver type of match. Anyways, after the match, James was selling in the ring Isla Dawn and Alba Fire. This was done so well in terms of producing, in terms of camera angles. They kind of just pop up right behind James as she's leaning on the ropes. They pull her back, beat her up. Brooks Jensen runs out, and he chases Dawn and Fire away. So I guess this leads into the fact that Alba Fire and Isla Dawn are the number 1 contenders, and they're going after at least one of the champions. I kind of like that part of this whole thing here. All right, let us go to Johnny Gargano and Casa Gargano. So Johnny Gargano, she's shown arriving home. Waller attacks Gargano before he could get to his doorway, but Gargano comes back. He gets the better of Waller at the start, but Waller eventually throws dirt in the eyes of Gargano. Gargano throws a trash can at Waller. The brawl continues. Candice LeRae just walks out casually, holding baby Gargano, baby wrestling, begging them to stop. Waller was getting the better of all of it, stomps on Gargano's face onto the lawn. Waller told LeRae that her husband isn't the same anymore. Waller walked away, and then LeRae runs out with the baby to check on Gargano. I really summarized things here. This was you had a rake beating, you had some more dirt, we got a bunch of stuff, and yeah, it ended with the surfboard stomp on Gargano's face, and kind of Waller just screaming at everyone. Funniest part here, and honestly, Matt even messaged me saying he couldn't wait to hear my thoughts on this one. And then that was just Candice LeRae, just casually holding baby wrestling, baby Gargano, as, her husband and the baby's dad is getting their ass kicked. So just very strange, Aren't you watching the show? Don't you love wrestling? Aren't you watching what your husband's doing? Don't you know that Grayson Waller is out there? Call the cops? Anything? I don't know. It just, again, this seemed so strange for me. That just seems so uncharacteristic of Grayson Waller. Grayson Waller is a douchebag, but he's harmless. He wouldn't put someone in real danger. He wouldn't play these mind games with someone. I don't know. It just seems very, very different. Very seems very strange. Also, I'm not judging, but you think that, Candice LeRae would have at least not had her child see his dad get his ass kicked. So that's the last point I wanted to make on that. That was I don't know. That was just weird. That was funny. Random. Very random. All right. We see Pretty Deadly. They are now listed as hosts of the show. We get different shots airing on Braun Breaker and Carmelo Hayes, who's with Trick Williams. They're walking backstage, and it's time for the contract signing. But before that, we must see what the Intel Express is up to, because they've been such a focus on this here NXT show for the past several weeks, and I honestly feel like it's just to piss me off. But I will say, honestly, I'm not being entertained, nor do I like them, at least Brooks Jensen, but some of this stuff has been relatively funny, and I'm kind of, my reality TV heart wants to see where this goes. Speaking of reality TV, Meltzer makes a Vanderpump Rules reference. Maximum Male Models make a Vanderpump Rules reference. I'm going on record saying that I was the first one to talk about Vanderpump Rules on last week's Spam. Just throwing that out there before we move on. All right. Brooks Jensen was with Kiana James, checking up on her after the beatdown earlier in the night. Fallon Henley and Josh Briggs show up. They're still dressed in their Prowler outfits. James asked where Henley was during her match. Henley said she didn't even know about the match, kind of playing dumb. Jensen then tells Henley about their tag team title match at Stand and Deliver, and everyone seems very confused. One funny part here is, Brooks Jensen, he says, "What are you wearing?" But he was actually talking to Kiana James' Prowler outfit as opposed to the huge ass camouflage that Briggs was wearing. So again, I kind of like that little town, Southern guy charm that they try to have here with Brooks Jensen. I think that's the most positive thing I've ever said about Brooks Jensen. What is happening to me? I'm getting soft at my old age. All right. Carmelo Hayes and Trick Williams make their entrance, and it's time for a contract signing, so you know what that means. There's a table and 2 office chairs set up in the ring. Braun Breaker comes out. Joseph said that only Finn Balor has had a longer title reign than Braun Breaker, really putting over how huge and how great Braun Breaker's reign has been. I think this is all to set up the passing of the torch. All right, so they both sit down at the setup table, and they both comment that no one's out there to moderate about the signing. Hayes said he doesn't care and told Breaker that they can handle it on their own. That's when Pretty Deadly comes out, and they say that as hosts of Stand and Deliver, it makes sense for them to be out there to host this contract signing. Carmelo says he meant no disrespect when he said he wanted to get this over with so we can have a new champion. Hayes says that he really respects everything Breaker has done, but at Stand and Deliver, it's going to be a changing of the guard, and he's going to take the NXT Championship and the entire NXT brand further than ever. Hayes told Breaker that he will come second to him. Braun speaks and disagrees with that last statement, but says that he does respect Hayes for making the North American Championship into what he thought was the A Championship. He said he did that because he just wasn't ready for the real championship. Mello said that on April 1st at Stand and Deliver, there's going to be a first for everything, and he doesn't want Braun with anger issues or fisherman Braun or smiling on all the posters Braun. He wants the guy who ran through walls, the guy who won War Games, and the guy that made Tommaso Ciampa tap out. Hayes said beating that Breaker is going to make his win that much better. Hayes says it's because it's true. Hayes is him. Braun agrees, but says that Hayes needs to prove that's more than a saying for a t-shirt. They both sign the contract and shake hands. They get up, they're ready to leave, but Pretty Deadly interject themselves one more time, and they just couldn't stay silent, and they said they can't just leave without giving the people some drama. Braun and Hayes take their shirts off. They square up face to face. They eventually slam each member of Pretty Deadly through the table, and they continue to face off, holding with Breaker holding up the belt over his head in frame. That was NXT. Again, it wasn't a bad show per se. Did some good storytelling, really tons of setup for Stand and Deliver, which is really shaping up to be a good card, which we'll talk about in future episodes as we get closer. But we have the North American multi-man match. We have the women's multi-man match. We have Carmelo Hayes going up against Braun Breaker in what's going to be a great match. And we have Johnny Gargano versus Grayson Waller. So this card is looking good. But I just felt like this episode of NXT was a little crazy. It was a little fast-paced, random. But overall, I think that they did a good job of setting up Stand and Deliver. So that is that. I just want to honestly thank everyone for listening. Keep it tuned here on SNME Radio because we have so much to get through, and we're not even halfway through the week. We still have Steve Swift's Dark review. We've got the old fucks coming at you with the AEW Dynamite review. I know that this week's episode of Dynamite is going to be huge. With them being here in Winnipeg, huge main event on that one. I know that Mike McGuire is going to be on site for that one, so I'm sure that the flagship show is going to be really, really interesting, really cool for that. Mike McGuire did get the scoop that we're likely going to get more house show announcements later tonight, so that's awesome work on Mike there. We have the Smack Daddies, we've got Rampage Ramble, we have MLW Rewind, which is an awesome show each and every single week here on that network. And the only way for you to get each and every single show is to become part of the family. And the way you do that is by becoming a Patreon member over at patreon.com/SNME Radio. Thank you for listening, Matt. We'll chat soon. And remember, everyone, stay tranquilo.